What's up, everyone? All right, so in today's episode, I'm going to give you my watch list for Monday morning and my game plan for the week ahead. I hope you guys are all having a great weekend. I'm excited for the market to be open bright and early Monday morning so I can sit down and hopefully find some nice opportunities. Last week, pretty strong overall. I had a couple of days that were a little slower. It was sort of interesting. It was like it was either really hot or it was kind of dead, which is not uncommon during a warmer and even hot market. On days where you have a stock that's strong, that meets the profile of all 5 criteria of stock selection, it's got a good news catalyst, everything is kind of just matches up right, you can get this huge move, and then the next day, you might not have anything on the scanner that looks that great. Now, typically in a really hot market, there's something moving big every day, because even if the stock on a colder day isn't as good as on a hotter day, traders are so eager to trade anything that's moving that even that B quality setup can end up working out well. That wasn't as much the case last week. It was kind of interesting. We had a couple days that it definitely felt slower. So going into Friday, into the end of after hours, WKEY held up strong. So this is set up right now really well for a trade at 4 a.m. And unfortunately, I'm going to miss that trade. This isn't, there are some trades that and stocks that I'd wake up early for. This is not one of them. GameStop, sure. But a stock like this, it may have some decent volume at 4 a.m. It may break through those levels. Its daily resistance, next level up, is this area right here, 1045. So that's an obvious first target from 875, the after hours close, up to 1045. And then you have gap fill on the daily up to around 12 right here. So now you've got gap fill to 12. And so if you break 1045, you'd look for a move to 12. If you can break 12, then you kind of have to get zoomed in on this area over here to see if there's anything really significant in the way of resistance. And I do note that area of 1640, that's got a flat top there right in this area. But I don't think anything in here is super significant. These could all be viewed as small little levels of resistance. But the thing also to be aware of is that, well, how much volume traded on these days? And you realize it's like 7,000 shares of volume. So the volume is like so light that I really don't worry about it there being a lot of bag holders at that price. You kind of have to, in a way, look back at the higher volume candles to figure out where there might be people that are stuck. So you've got a higher volume candle back there in 2021. And how high, what was the price back then? Ugh. So, adjusted because it did a reverse split, there might be some people that got in at that price, which, if they're stuck there, they're way, way down in the position. And they've actually done 2 reverse splits. So, I'm not sure how much more this will give us, but the volume on Friday was 75 million shares. High volume, had the news catalyst on Friday of launching a satellite with SpaceX in January. So, traders liked it, the market liked it, and it closed strong. Right now on the 5-minute chart, I would say that it has some degree of ascending support sort of in this area, right? So you see this sort of resistance, it ties back there, and then broke above it, retested it, held, retested it, held. So now you're getting in a smaller wedge. What could happen at 4 a.m. is right at 4 a.m., the market opens and it just, pops up to 10 or 1050, maybe that resistance level there, and then drops all the way back down. And then when I'm sitting down at 7 a.m., I'm going to just see this sort of big, red candle. Now it's also possible to go straight to 14, 15, or 16, and I'll sit down and, it'll have pulled back and you'll be hanging out in this area, which I would then consider for the next leg up. It's also possible that it could just sell off, but I don't really see that as the most likely thing that would happen at 4 a.m., just given the strength on Friday and the volume, but, of course I could be wrong. So anyway, so this is one definitely on the watch list. My only concern with it is that I just might not, the move might happen without me. So, they'll go without you if you're not able to be there. And I'm just not planning on getting up at 3:45 so I can sit here at 4 a.m. tomorrow. I just don't think, I could be, this will be the one that goes to like $50 at 4 a.m. But I just, my expectation is that I wouldn't really, I don't consistently make enough money at that time of day that it's worth doing that. It really throws off my entire day when I try to get up that early. So anyway, so that's that. That's WKEY. So that's definitely on watch for Monday morning. Well, what's next? So if we look at some of the trades from last week, we could pull up the continuation scanner here, and we can also actually just pull up the after hours top gainer scanner. So we'll see if there's anything in here. WKEY, UBXG. So let's just link this up to our charts and click UBXG. So definitely popped up. Float on this one is 1 million shares. Let's see if I can pull up the headline on it. So what time did the move begin? So, So let's see what the 13D was for. So 13D, someone bought 2.7 million shares. That is very interesting. So China. Okay. All right. So that kind of, that's not uncommon that we see that kind of pop on a Chinese stock. Is it going to carry into Monday? It might, but you always have to be a little bit more cautious with. I don't mind trading them. I mean, they can be volatile, but you just have to be aware that there's going to be more risk. So the volume was about 1.5 million shares. Wasn't a lot. Checking on the daily chart, higher volume on these days back here. They were red candles. So what was the price there? Oh, gosh, look at this. Oh, man. Wow. Ugh, golly. These charts are awful. All the way up to 550, all the way down basically to 0. I mean, this is just unbelievable. And then they do a 16-to-1 reverse split. Yeah, so now the float's gone down a lot to 1 million shares. You can pull up BAM SEC for 1 second. UBXG. So they had 27 million shares as of June 30th, right? But then they did the reverse split. This was November. So, okay, so that's why the float is lower. That makes sense. Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, we just see this type of price action with these stocks all the time. I mean, look, it's nice when you get a stock that goes from $100 to $500 a share and trade the front side of the move, but when it drops 90% in one day, that's not so fun. Wow, so they're talking about all these different companies. Revenues, cost of revenues, gross profit. They have an awful profit margin. I mean, they're doing $50 million of revenue for a gross profit of $700,000. And then they've got operating expenses. I mean, they've got a loss. It's not a massive loss, but, So I don't know. I could spend more time going through this, but I'm not sure that it's worth it. So we'll see what it looks like tomorrow. Hopefully there's something better looking than this, but it is up 50% after hours. So the prior day's close, it's up 50% from the prior day's close. So when we sit down tomorrow morning, it'll be up 50%, right? It's going to continue to hold that gap. Well, and of course, unless it sells off, but all right. So that's the after hours top gainer scanner. CKPT, 34 million share float. VMAR volume's pretty light on that. So, all right. So then our continuation scanner, AMPG, I'm going to pull this one up real quick and just take a peek. This stock has been hanging out kind of under 3. I think from this day, there were traders that went heavy on it, short. It just had high volume. It was a grinder. It traded over 200 million shares, but it's continued to hold these levels. So I think this is the type of stock that could give us some more opportunities to the upside, but it has to break and hold over 3, right? So this is the level where it's been below 3. So it needs to break and hold over 3. That's very important for this one. All right, so that's AMPG. LETC, sort of similar, super high volume, but this one is pulled back a little bit more. Would need to hold over like 220-ish, 230, this level, to then give us a chance for a move back up to 3. CDIO, I don't like that one as much. It's a little too cheap. LASE, it's also a little cheaper. CMRX. CMRX chart's actually very similar to AMPG. They both are kind of like hanging out right at that $3 level. RNB, UAMY, no. QRE, this one was a little tricky. It is in a wedge here. So the wedge is coming kind of down from up here and up from here. So if it can continue to hold this level and not break down, we might get a move higher, but notice the volume. High volume here, and the volume's gone super low. So in order for us to get a big move up to like, 18 or 20 or something like that, we're going to need volume. Where's that volume going to come from? Well, just the very fact that it's breaking out will bring in some volume. And if there was nothing else moving on that day, it might be enough. But I think in this market, because we're seeing enough stocks that are moving quite nicely, I just think that that's probably not going to work. So that's sort of my gut feeling that that's not going to work unless it has fresh news. And then some of these others just don't really, I've looked at them and I'm not really that interested. So I would say at this point, we've got a couple stocks that are worth keeping an eye on, a couple on the side chart, WKEY definitely on watch. And then overall market S&P 500, we're kind of coming in now to officially the Santa rally. So 10 days before Christmas, Santa rally. This is the time of year historically the market has rallied. It's, a consistent trend over decades. So that the market's been higher during this 10-day window than not. But that's the overall market. I mean, the overall market really is, we're look at how much we're up since the lows of October of 2022. I mean, the sentiment has shifted so much this year. I mean, 2022 was gone. That was awful. 2023, the market was rallying, but sentiment was still really poor. We were in the middle of the Biden presidency, his term. I mean, there was just the Federal Reserve, the interest rates, the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. I mean, it was just, people were just not feeling good. And now it seems like the market is, optimistically pricing in that the new administration is going to improve the economy and that things are going to be better. So, and we've got this big move from 500 all the way up to 600, really strong. So I don't know how much it's realistic that the market's going to squeeze in the next 10 days before the end of the year. But historically, this has been a strong 10-day window. So, all right, well, that would be nice if it does move higher because it's a rising tide that kind of lifts all ships in the market. So we'll have a tailwind if the overall market's strong. If the overall market's weak, we're going to have a little bit of a headwind. And, if that's the case, that's fine. We can, I could deal with that. But that's just something to also be aware of. No, that's the S&P 500. The IWM, the Russell Index, let me just pull this up here. This has come down a little bit more. Initially, right after the Trump election, big win, for IWM, small cap companies, appreciating that. Dropped down, retested previous resistance, held, coming back up. Dipping back down again, though. We don't really want to see it dip down a whole lot more, but I think you do probably have some ascending support lines that you could draw. I mean, you could draw these properly with a trend line and get them to the penny, but, we'll see if it ends up holding these levels. But right now, I would say that the profile of the stocks that have still been working the best have been biotech stocks. So I'm going to keep paying extra close attention to biotech stocks that have breaking news, especially when they've got a lower float and they're priced between 2 and 10. Now, we did have a number of stocks in the last week that had higher floats and even some that were easy to borrow, but still moved nicely. I did notice a comment that said, Ross, you never follow your 5 pillars of stock selection. I disagree with that. I mostly do follow it. There are times where there'll be a stock that has no news and it's moving and I'll trade it. And so there's also going to be times when we have a stock that the float's a little higher, but it's moving and I'll trade it. So there's a couple things that I look for. I've got my 5 criteria for stock selection. And if you're a beginner trader, it makes a lot of sense to only trade stocks that meet that 5 criteria because I'm going to have higher accuracy on a stock that meets all 5 criteria. Just typically, that's the stock that's going to work better. Now, when I'm trading well, the market's hot, and I've got a nice cushion, there may be a stock that meets 4 out of the 5 criteria, and I think, well, I think maybe I should take the risk on this. And I know I'm taking risk, and it's a little outside my wheelhouse in price or float, whatever the case is, but the market supports taking that risk. And so what most traders do is you've got your core strategy of like, this is the basics. And as a beginner, if you're learning my strategy, you should stick with the basics and master that before branching out. But then we want to branch out a little bit. And so we typically in a hot market will branch out a little bit. And then when the market cools off, we're forced to come back to our bread and butter, back to our basics. But when we come back in, maybe through that last expansion of testing different strategies, we picked up a couple tips and tricks that when we come back in, we've maybe added one more setup to our tool belt, so to speak. So the more times you go through that expanding and then contracting, expanding, contracting, the more you build. And I think about like Apple, through the late 90s and the way they sort of came out with like the iMac. And then they had 13 versions of the iMac, and they had it with the laptop and all the different, models. And then they kind of came back to like their core. And then they did the shuffle, and they had like 15 shuffles. I mean, they had like the small one, the medium one, the big one, the extra gigabytes, like like all these different versions. And then they kind of stretch too thin, and then they kind of come back to the core. And the sort of market forces that. It's like they have to be able to put more things out there and see what people like, and then they've got to bring it back in. But trading is sort of similar. You've got to, when things are hot and going well for you, it's okay, I think, to expand and try to trade at the edge of your comfort zone and test things out a little bit, but then you've also got to come back in. Whether or not you're in a place in your journey and your track record and profitability to go away from the basics is another question. If you're right now at the place of, I'm just trying to consistently make 100 a day, then you should really keep those training wheels and those guardrails on so you keep yourself focused. So anyways, there were a couple stocks last week that had slightly higher floats that I traded anyways. There were a couple stocks that did not have news, but I traded those anyways as well. And then there were some stocks that perfectly met all 5 criteria, and I had some good trades on those. So, it's sort of, there's some discretion involved with, this is the general profile of what's been working, but that profile can change. And, I've got to be able to keep an eye on, what's the trend in the market. So with that, here's the deal. I'll be streaming tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. for all of our members at Warrior Trading. I will put a link in the description and pin to the top comments where you can do a 2-week trial. You can watch over my shoulder. I'm going to be trading through, of course, the holiday. I don't take vacation. So I will be away, but I'll be trading. I'm bringing my trading station with me, so it doesn't matter. So anyways, so you want to do a 2-week trial? Link down in the comments. You can join me, watch over my shoulder for 2 weeks, and you can use the software, Day Trade Dash, use the charting, use the scanners, use the news feed, be in the chat room, and everything else. All right, so hope you guys had a great weekend. I will see you back at it first thing tomorrow morning. All right, reminder as always, trading is risky. My results aren't typical, so please manage your risk, take it slow. I'll see you guys here bright and early tomorrow morning.